Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Jeremiah 6:16. Brothers and sisters, there's a stillness in the storm that the world can't explain. There's a rest in the middle of chaos that money can't buy. And there's a command from heaven that's been forgotten, ignored, rewritten, but not erased. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. God didn't whisper it, He thundered it from the mountain. Not as a suggestion, not as a cultural tradition, but as a prophetic command for the end-time people. Let me talk to somebody who's been running from your calling, running from truth, running with the world and away from the Word. The Sabbath is not just a day off. It's a divine appointment. It's not just a ritual, it's a revelation. It's not legalism, it's liberation. See, the enemy wants you busy but not blessed, woke but not wise. He wants your calendar full but your spirit empty. But the Most High said, I've set aside a day to meet with you. A divine reset, a weekly sanctuary, a prophetic sign. And in these end times, when deception is everywhere, when false light is being sold as truth, when compromise is dressed up like compassion, God is raising up a remnant that doesn't just sing about Jesus, but walks like Him. And what did He do? Luke 4:16 says, as His custom was, He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. If the Messiah kept the Sabbath, why are His followers trying to change it? If God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, why are we still trying to rewrite what He already made holy? This is more than a day. This is a declaration of who your God is. In the end times, it's not just about who you believe in, it's about who you obey. Revelation 14:12 says, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Not either or, both. The Sabbath is a sign of spiritual alignment, a mark of distinction, a seal of divine ownership. God is calling you to rest. Not because you're tired, but because He's getting ready to act. Because when the world spins out of control, only those anchored in obedience will stand. So don't follow the crowd, follow the cloud. The same cloud that led Israel through the wilderness, the same word that thundered at Sinai, the same Spirit that descended on Christ at the Jordan is calling you, not to religion, but to relationship, not to tradition, but to truth, not to fear, but to faithful rest. It's time to come out of Babylon, time to silence the noise, time to stop negotiating with your convictions. Because the end-time people of God, they're not marked by convenience, they're marked by covenant. Keep the Sabbath, not for salvation, but because you are saved. Not out of fear, but out of love. Not for man's approval, but for God's glory. The time is now. The call is clear. Prophetic rest is not optional, it's essential, because the end-time battle is not just about who you worship, but the Sabbath in creation, a divine pattern for humanity. In the beginning, when there was no religion, no denominations, no debates over doctrine, there was a day not made by man, but sanctified by God. Genesis 2:1-3 says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended His work which He had made, and He rested on the seventh day from all His work which He had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified. Before there was sin, before there was a Jew, before the 10 Commandments were written in stone, God Himself established the seventh day as holy. Let that sink in. The Sabbath was not introduced at Sinai, it was introduced at creation. That means it wasn't given to a nation, it was given to humanity. It wasn't designed to be a Jewish custom, it was divinely woven into the rhythm of life itself. When God rested on the seventh day, it wasn't because He was tired. Omnipotence doesn't get weary. God rested because He was finished, and He wanted to enjoy the fullness of what He created. He rested because rest is a form of relationship. He paused not for Himself, but for us. In a world that idolizes hustle and glorifies exhaustion, God modeled something radically different. He showed us that rest is sacred. Rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. God didn't need rest but he knew we would. He hardwired into creation a divine pattern that says, every seventh day, return to me. Lay it all down. Stop working. Stop chasing. Stop trying to earn your worth. Just be. In that rest, he left a space for us to remember who we are and who he is. The Sabbath at its core is about identity and intimacy. It's not just a pause in the week. It's a pulse of divine rhythm that reminds us we are not machines. We are image bearers. That seventh day was blessed and sanctified, not because of any action we take, but because of what God did. He set it apart. It's the only day in creation he blessed. He didn't bless the first day. He didn't bless the second. He blessed the seventh. So when people ask which day is holy, the answer is clear. God declared it from the beginning, and God does not change. The Sabbath isn't just about physical rest. It's a spiritual act of rebellion against the spirit of Pharaoh that tells you to keep making bricks without straw. It's resistance to the system that never lets up, that tells you you're only worth what you produce. On Sabbath you declare, my value doesn't come from what I do. It comes from who I belong to. When you keep the Sabbath, you're not just obeying a commandment. You're aligning yourself with the divine order of creation. In the chaos of the end times, we will need more than just information. We'll need transformation. And the transformation begins with obedience to God's original design. That's why the enemy has fought so hard to cover it up, to twist it, to hide it behind tradition. Because the Sabbath is a sign, it's a reminder. Every seventh day is a return to Eden, a return to peace, a return to purpose. So when God says, remember the Sabbath day, he's not just telling you to count days. He's telling you to come back to the divine rhythm. He's calling you to step out of the noise and into his presence, to stop running and start resting, not just in a bed, but in him. Because in the beginning, before the fall, before the flood, before the nations, there was a day, and it still stands, a divine pattern, a prophetic rest, a gift from the Creator to his creation. The fourth commandment, the only one God said to remember of all the 10 commandments, spoken by the voice of God and written by his own finger in stone. Only one begins with the word remember. Exodus 28 says, remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Isn't it something that the one commandment people are quickest to forget is the only one God specifically told us to remember? Not remember not to steal, or remember not to kill, but remember the Sabbath. God knew our tendency to drift. He knew that time would pass. Cultures would change, and traditions would try to take the place of truth. He knew that empires would rise and fall, churches would compromise, and commandments would be spiritualized, revised, and even denied. But he left a word that echoes through the ages. Remember. Why remember? Because the Sabbath is not just about a day. It's about a God who wants to be remembered. It's about a relationship that must be refreshed weekly. The Sabbath isn't merely an instruction, it's an invitation. God is saying, remember me. Remember who created you. Remember who delivered you. Remember who provides for you. Don't let the noise of the world drown out my voice. And he doesn't just tell us to remember it. He tells us how to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor, do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. Not your Sabbath, not your pastor's Sabbath, not a national holiday. It is the Lord's Sabbath. That means the authority behind the day is not man-made. It's divine. When you honor the Sabbath, you're not just taking a break, you're making a statement. You are declaring to heaven and earth, I serve the Creator, not the culture. And it's no coincidence that this is the longest commandment, the most detailed and yet the most disregarded. In those few verses, God mentions creation, labor, rest, and sanctification. He roots the Sabbath in the very beginning. For in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. This commandment is the bridge between our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. The first 3 commandments are about honoring God. The last 6 are about living righteously with others. But right in the middle, the 4th commandment connects both. Why? Because Sabbath keeping requires you to acknowledge God as Creator and it also requires you to rest and allow others to rest. It teaches justice, compassion, and order. God didn't tell us to remember it for his benefit, but for ours. In the busyness of life, we forget to breathe, we forget to pray, we forget to listen. But the Sabbath says, come aside, lay down your burden, cease striving, I've got you. It is a holy appointment, a sacred space in time where eternity touches earth, and every week that divine appointment is waiting. The question is, will we show up? We live in an age of constant distraction, endless scrolling, non-stop productivity, but the Sabbath stands like a lighthouse in the fog, calling us back to what really matters. It reminds us that we are not God, we are not machines, we are not slaves to schedules, we are children of the Most High, and He has commanded us to rest. Not just physically, but spiritually, to rest in His promises, to rest in His presence, to rest in the knowledge that He is enough. When God wrote, remember, He wasn't just looking back, He was looking ahead. He saw our generation, He saw the deception, He saw the spiritual amnesia sweeping the world, and He gave us an anchor. The Sabbath is that anchor. It's a sign between God and His people forever. So let us not forget what God told us to remember. Let us not replace the sacred with the convenient. Let us not trade obedience for tradition, because the fourth commandment still speaks, and it begins with a word we dare not ignore. Remember. Sabbath and identity. Who do you belong to? In a world obsessed with self-definition, where people chase identity through status, social media, nationality, and achievement, the question still echoes from eternity. Who do you belong to? Not just who you are, but whose you. The Sabbath was never meant to be just a religious observance or a day marked by legalism. It was always about identity. Divine identity. When God gave the Sabbath, He was marking His people, branding them with a symbol of belonging. Ezekiel 20:12 declares, moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths, to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that sanctify them. The Sabbath is a divine signpost that says, these are my people, set apart, claimed, marked by rest. It's easy to claim belief. Many profess faith with their lips, but belief is not just spoken, it's lived. God never asked for empty declarations. He asked for covenant loyalty, and the Sabbath was woven into the very fabric of that covenant. It's not just about taking a break, it's about stepping into alignment. Every seventh day, when you choose to rest in obedience, you are testifying to the world around you and to the unseen spiritual realm. I belong to the God who created the heavens and the earth. It is no coincidence that the Sabbath commandment in Exodus 20 connects directly to creation. God said, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth. That means every time you honor the Sabbath, you affirm who your Creator is. You declare that you didn't evolve from chaos, that your life isn't random, and that you were made on purpose by a God who rested to enjoy the beauty of His creation, including you. But this identity goes deeper. In Deuteronomy 5, where the 10 Commandments are repeated, the Sabbath is also linked to deliverance. God says to remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, and He brought you out with a mighty hand. So the Sabbath is not just about creation, it's about redemption. It's a memorial of freedom. When you keep the Sabbath, you're not just saying, God made me, you're saying, God saved me. You're walking in the double truth that you are both created and redeemed by the same God, and that is your identity. The world offers 1,000 identities, temporary, shallow, and often destructive. But God's Sabbath cuts through the noise. It reminds you that you are not what you do. You are not defined by your income, your job title, your mistakes, or your popularity. You are a child of the King, and He has carved out sacred time to spend with you. That is worth more than anything money can buy. The Sabbath is not man's invention. It's God's signature. It is His weekly reminder that you are His, and He is yours. And in the final days of Earth's history, identity will be everything. Revelation 14 describes a remnant people who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. These people are not swayed by popular opinion. They don't follow the crowd. They follow the cloud. They are not marked by tradition. They are marked by truth. Your choice to honor the Sabbath is not just a lifestyle decision. It's a spiritual declaration. It separates you from the system of Babylon, where everything is about performance and pressure. It marks you as part of a kingdom that values presence over productivity and obedience over opinion. And as deception grows and truth is twisted, your identity in Christ must be rooted in obedience to His word. So ask yourself, who do you belong to? The answer is written in how you live. It's revealed in what you remember, and it's declared every time you honor the Sabbath, not as a burden but as a blessing. Because when you rest in God's time, you rest in your true identity. And there is no greater freedom than knowing exactly who you are and whose you are. Jesus and the Sabbath, walking in His footsteps. When we talk about following Jesus, we often focus on His love, His miracles, and His sacrifice. But to truly walk in His footsteps means to live as He lived, to do as He did. And one of the most consistent patterns in the life of Jesus was His relationship with the Sabbath. From His childhood to His final breath, Jesus honored the Sabbath, not out of tradition, but out of alignment with the will of the Father. Luke 4:16 tells us, "And He came to Nazareth, where He had been brought up. And as His custom was, He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and stood up to read." His custom, His practice was Sabbath observance, not casually, not occasionally, but consistently. This wasn't legalism. This was love. Jesus didn't keep the Sabbath because He had to. He kept it because He was in perfect harmony with the heart of the Father who created it. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Jesus said that in Mark 2:27-28, and then added something bold. "Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath." That means He didn't just observe it, He owned it. He was the author of the day, walking among men, showing us not only how to keep it, but how to live in its power. He healed on the Sabbath, not to break it, but to reveal its true purpose. The Pharisees had turned it into a burden, but Jesus restored it as a blessing. When He healed the man with the withered hand, or told the crippled woman to stand straight, He wasn't profaning the Sabbath, He was fulfilling it. He was showing that rest is not just about inactivity, it's about restoration. It's about freedom. The Sabbath is not a prison of rules, it's a palace of peace. And Jesus, our example in all things, showed us how to enter that palace with joy. Even in His death, Jesus honored the Sabbath. When His body was taken down from the cross, Luke 23:56 tells us that His followers rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. Jesus, even in the grave, kept the seventh day holy. He rose on the first day, not to start a new Sabbath, but to fulfill the plan of redemption. His rest in the tomb was the divine exclamation point on the Sabbath, as a covenant from creation to Calvary. If we say we follow Jesus, we must walk where He walked. He never once changed the Sabbath. He never taught His disciples to abandon it. In fact, He said in Matthew 5:17 that He did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. And He warned that not one jot or tittle would pass from the law until all things were accomplished. The Sabbath is part of that law, etched in stone, sealed by God's own voice, and modeled by Christ's own life. In the last days, as deception increases and truth is blurred, the example of Jesus becomes more crucial than ever. The Sabbath will once again be a dividing line, not of denominations, but of devotion, not of tradition, but of truth. To follow Jesus is to follow Him in word, in spirit, and in action. That includes walking into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was His custom. That includes embracing the day, not as a relic of the past, but as a gift for the present and a sign for the future. So let us walk as He walked. Let us live as He lived. Let us rest as He rested. For in doing so, we don't just keep a commandment, we keep covenant. We align our lives with the rhythm of heaven. We walk in the footsteps of the Lord of the Sabbath, and in His steps we find peace, purpose, and power. The Sabbath in prophecy, end-time faithfulness. As the world races toward its final chapter, the battle between truth and deception intensifies. Prophecy unfolds not in whispers, but in global shifts, in politics, religion, and personal convictions. And at the center of this end-time drama lies an often overlooked command: the Sabbath. What began in Eden and was sealed in stone at Sinai now emerges as a final test of loyalty. Revelation doesn't just speak in symbols, it speaks in signs. And one of the most critical signs of end-time faithfulness is obedience to God's Sabbath. Revelation 14 describes a group of people unlike any other. They are not swayed by culture, comfort, or compromise. Verse 12 says, "Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." These aren't lukewarm believers. These are faithful warriors who hold tightly to both the law and the Lamb. In a world that's forgetting the commandments, they remember. In a time when many have reshaped Christ in their own image, they remain grounded in His truth. And central to those commandments, right in the heart of the law, is the Sabbath. Why would God allow something as ancient as the Sabbath to become an end-time issue? Because the Sabbath is more than a day, it's a declaration. It declares who your Creator is. It declares who your King is. It declares who your allegiance belongs to. And when the systems of the world begin enforcing a false day of worship, the remnant people will stand not with violence or protest, but with peace and obedience. They will refuse to bow to man's law when it contradicts God's law. The Bible speaks of a beast power in Revelation 13 that seeks to enforce worship on its terms. This isn't just about statues or political decrees. It's about worship. It's about authority. It's about who has the right to define truth. And God's people will be identified by their refusal to follow the majority. When the majority departs from the word, while the world accepts a counterfeit Sabbath, God's faithful will cling to the seventh-day Sabbath, not to earn salvation, but to honor their Savior. Daniel 7:20 says that a power would think to change times and laws. And what law of God is both a commandment and a time? The fourth, the Sabbath, the only commandment that begins with remember, is the one the enemy has worked hardest to make us forget. But in these last days, God is raising up voices to restore the breach, to lift up the standard, and to call His people back to the ancient paths. Isaiah 58:13-14 promises that if we call the Sabbath a delight and honor it, we will ride on the high places of the earth. There is blessing in obedience. There is joy in surrender. And in a world collapsing under the weight of confusion, God's Sabbath remains a clear line in the sand. It separates those who worship in spirit and truth from those who follow tradition and convenience. Keeping the Sabbath in the end times won't be easy. It will cost you. It may cost your job, your comfort, even your reputation. But it will also define your character. In a time of forced worship and false doctrine, Sabbath keepers will be walking sermons. Their lives will speak louder than words. They will be living witnesses that God still has a people who trust Him completely. So when the final crisis comes, and it will, the question will not simply be, do you believe, but will you obey? The Sabbath will be the dividing test, and those who choose it will not be doing so out of legalism, but out of love, out of faith, out of loyalty to the one who said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." In the end, faithfulness will not be measured by feelings, popularity, or tradition. It will be measured by truth. And the Sabbath will stand as both a test and a testimony of who we are, and more importantly, whose we are. Spiritual rest and physical renewal, the health connection. In a world that never stops moving, where busyness is worn like a badge of honor, the soul and the body are crying out for rest. The modern lifestyle has created a constant state of stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. People are running on empty, grinding through life without pause, and slowly losing their connection to peace, both spiritually and physically. But God, in His wisdom, built into creation a rhythm of rest that not only renews the spirit, but also heals the body. It's called the Sabbath, and its blessings go far beyond worship. They extend into every cell of your being. From the very beginning, rest was part of God's design for human flourishing. After 6 days of creation, God didn't rest because He was tired. He rested because He was finished. And then He blessed the seventh day and made it holy. In doing so, He created a sacred space in time for humanity to rest, reflect, and reconnect. Science is only now catching up to what Scripture has said all along. True rest is vital to life, not just sleep, not just a day off, but spiritual restorative rest that aligns body, mind, and soul with the Creator. The Sabbath is more than a command. It's a gift. It is God's prescription for burnout, anxiety, and soul fatigue. Studies have shown that chronic stress weakens the immune system, increases the risk of heart disease, and accelerates aging. But when you pause, when you honor the Sabbath, you allow your body to repair and your mind to reset. You slow the pace, you inhale peace and exhale pressure, and in that stillness, your body responds. Cortisol levels drop, blood pressure stabilizes, mental clarity improves. The Sabbath isn't just holy, it's healing. But the health connection goes deeper than biology. The Sabbath is a time to step away from distractions and focus on what really matters. When you disconnect from work, screens, and the demands of daily life, you create space for relationships to flourish with God, with your family, and even with yourself. Loneliness is a silent epidemic in today's society, but the Sabbath invites us into communion. It's a weekly appointment with love, rest, and connection, and those things are essential to health. When Jesus said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," He wasn't only talking about salvation. He was inviting us into Sabbath, into wholeness, into a rhythm that renews. Physical rest without spiritual rest is incomplete. You can sleep for 8 hours and still wake up weary if your soul is burdened. But when you rest in God, when you align your week to begin with worship, you experience renewal on every level. The Sabbath teaches us balance. It reminds us that we are not machines. We are not defined by productivity or performance. We are children of God, and our worth is found in being, not just doing. Every week, God calls us to lay our burdens down and simply be with Him, to enjoy creation, to nourish our bodies with peace, to reclaim our time, and that has a powerful impact on our health. There is a reason God said the Sabbath was made for man, not as a burden, but as a blessing. In these days of high-speed living and relentless striving, the Sabbath is more relevant than ever. It invites us to slow down, to breathe, to remember who we are and whose we are. It brings rest to the soul and healing to the body. It is not outdated, it is divine design. And when we honor it, we align ourselves with the rhythm of heaven and the wisdom of the Creator, who knows exactly what we need. So let the world keep racing, let the chaos swirl, but you, child of God, step into the Sabbath, embrace the stillness, experience the renewal, because in that holy rest is the strength to rise again, refreshed, healed, and whole.